And I want to talk to you today about some shifts in organizational culture as I get to speak with and work with organizations and institutions, whether they be larger churches, businesses, educational institutions. I've observed these sort of institutional and organizational movements over the last few years. Many have been written about. Some have already taken place. Some are emerging. But I'd like to talk about a few of them and maybe some implications for your leadership related to those. The first is from a focus on the organization to a focus on the organism. You see that now with less focus around all the little slots and things that relate to the organization as something in and of itself to be maintained, and more emphasis on what is happening inside the culture of where we work or where we minister or where we live. What's happening with the people, what's happening with emerging ideas and systems and the integration of those things. So it's more organism oriented, the culture itself, the vibe that's coming from within that, if you will, than around maintaining the organization or putting too much emphasis on the structure of the organization. That leads to a second one, which is instead of being institutionally driven, being institutionally supported. The institution's important, but what's the role of the institution? Is it to drive everything and pass everything down, or is it to support emerging ideas, new leadership developing, new teams, new formats, new engagements? I used to have this mantra, still do, but for many years, the structure serves the people don't serve the structure. And so what we're seeing is more of a shift to moving structures that can accommodate what's happening within the organization, so to speak, or for the organization's mission, and shaping the institution to support people versus to make them support the institution. That's related to another one I've observed, and that's obviously the move from more of a hierarchical to a flatter structure. I don't think we'll ever be totally flat in many institutions and organizations. I don't want to be overly idealistic about that. But I think there definitely is a movement away from strict, oppressive sometimes hierarchies, where power is centered in only a few and the many are just left as implementers. And you're going to see a flatter leadership as we become more organic, as we continue to become more shared in resources and in other strategies that we have. And frankly, a younger emerging leadership core desires that. And I think you need to accommodate that. Another one is what I would call a shift from content to value. In other words, it's not just our message and what we think about it and how we deliver it, but what value we bring and what are the underlying values behind that. It's more important for us to understand as a working culture what are the core things at the heart of who we are versus simply what's the message we've given, always given, how do we keep giving it, how do we get the same message to more people. There's truth in some of that and a need for some of that, but what are the underlying values behind the message? People need to hear that and be motivated by it. It's also the sense of a movement from an event to a lifestyle. Whether you're in business or nonprofit or whatever, this is particularly true, I think, in a lot of ministry situations, but it's not limited to that. Where the event, for example, in a church, the Sunday service, or in a business, the sales transaction, perhaps, it's not all about just the event. It's about a lifestyle. In other words, we don't just gear up to present something. We're trying to become something. And as leaders and as an organization, the emphasis is on how are we living out these values and beliefs that we have. Another thing I see is a shift from creating just distribution channels, again, core product or ideas being disseminated, to what I would call missional hubs, where ideas are being generated all around the organization and out in the culture, so that we're not just a centralized group finding more ways to create more distribution channels. That's valid when we have a quality product or service, but it's how do we create more hubs that are themselves generating product and ideas, so it's not always all coming from sort of central base. And finally, from being more siloed to more integrated. I think we've seen that across a number of kinds of institutions and organizations. Instead of it's just sales and marketing and distribution and R&D and so on in the corporate areas, or in education where we just have administration and then there's faculty and then or within disciplines. I teach history, you teach science, you teach theology, and we don't talk to each other. That's breaking down to where we see more integrated aspects, because educationally, developmentally, we need the integration of ideas. We need to expose people to one another. So more and more cross-functional teams, more ad hoc teams, more conversations around the lunch table from people from various disciplines helps each of us grow and develop in our leadership. The implications of these shifts are As I mentioned, I think a flatter leadership, people who are more relational in their leadership, more able to build teams and connect with them. I think in general, people who are more interested in modeling the values than simply disseminating, again, the information. So I think for us as leaders, whatever my organization or institution is, I need to embody that first and foremost. It's more important that I live in the world of being what I'm advocating, not just doing some things around the principles and values. And finally, I think that we're seeing ideas come at the core of leadership, not just mandates and control and management, but ideas. That it's the ideas for the future that will drive the future organization, the future institution. So these are some of the things I think in our leadership, which as it becomes more collaborative and more shared, not without authority, not without power, but I think these movements and shifts demand that kind of leadership. And I'm interested in what you think, so let me know. As I work with leadership teams and teach and do conferences, I understand that these shifts are happening, and I'm trying to help leaders engage those things. What are you doing to engage these shifts? I'd be interested in hearing from you. So have a great day.